The unexpected discovery. Marcus Thompson adjusted his tie as he walked through the glass doors of Thompson Industries, the company he had built from nothing over 15 years. At 38, he was one of the youngest CEOs in the city, known for his sharp business mind and his dedication to his employees. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floor of the lobby as employees greeted him with respectful nods. Today was different, though. Today was Bring Your Child to Work Day, an initiative Marcus had started 3 years ago to show his employees how much he valued their families. Children's laughter echoed through the usually quiet corridors, and colorful drawings decorated the conference room walls. Marcus smiled as he watched the chaos unfold. It reminded him of something he had always missed in his own childhood. As he made his way to his office on the 20th floor, Marcus caught sight of a small figure sitting alone in the corner of the reception area. While other children ran around excitedly, this little girl sat quietly, drawing in a notebook with intense concentration. She appeared to be around 7 years old, with dark curly hair that fell past her shoulders, and wore a simple blue dress that looked freshly ironed despite being clearly inexpensive. Something about her stillness drew Marcus closer. As he approached, the receptionist, Mrs. Chen, looked up apologetically. "Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry about the noise level today. The children are quite excited." "It's perfectly fine, Mrs. Chen. That's exactly what we wanted." Marcus glanced down at the little girl, who was now looking up at him with large brown eyes that seemed far too serious for someone her age. "And who might this young artist be?" "This is Emma Rodriguez. She's here with her mother, Maria, who works in our cleaning department. Emma's been sitting here all morning, drawing pictures of the building." Marcus knelt down to Emma's level, something he had learned to do when meeting children during company events. "May I see your drawings, Emma?" The little girl hesitated for a moment, then turned her notebook toward him. The drawings were surprisingly detailed for someone her age. Sketches of the building's exterior, the lobby fountain, and even some of the employees she had observed. But what caught Marcus's attention wasn't her artistic talent. As Emma reached up to brush a strand of hair from her face, Marcus saw it clearly. A distinctive crescent-shaped birthmark on her left wrist. The mark was about the size of a quarter, with a small star-like spot at one end. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat as he instinctively looked down at his own left wrist, where an identical birthmark had been hidden under his watch since childhood. The birthmark had been a source of embarrassment for Marcus growing up. Other children had teased him about it, calling it a witch mark, or asking if it was a tattoo. His adoptive parents had been kind, but had never been able to answer his questions about where it came from. They had adopted him when he was just 6 months old, and the records from the orphanage had been minimal. "That's a beautiful birthmark," Marcus said gently, trying to keep his voice steady. "I have one very similar to it." Emma's eyes widened with surprise and curiosity. "Really? Can I see it?" Marcus glanced around the busy reception area, then made a decision. "Would you like to see my office? It has a great view of the city, and I have some art supplies up there if you'd like to draw more pictures." Emma looked toward the elevators, where her mother was helping to organize the other children for a building tour. "My mama said I should stay here and be good. We'll let your mama know where you are. Mrs. Chen, could you please find Maria Rodriguez and let her know that Emma is visiting my office for a few minutes?" As they rode the elevator up to the executive floor, Marcus found himself studying Emma's profile. There was something familiar about the shape of her nose, the way she held her head when she was thinking. When they reached his office, Emma gasped at the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. "Wow, you can see everything from up here." Emma pressed her face against the glass, her earlier shyness forgotten in her excitement. Marcus watched her with growing amazement. Not only did she have his birthmark, but she also had the same habit he'd had as a child of tilting her head to the left when she was concentrating. When she smiled, there was a small dimple in her left cheek, exactly where his was located. "Emma, can you tell me about your family?" Marcus asked carefully as he pulled out a chair for her at the small conference table in his office. "It's just me and Mama," Emma replied, settling into the chair and opening her notebook again. "Mama works really hard cleaning offices so we can have a nice apartment. She says my papa went to heaven before I was born, but sometimes I think maybe he's just lost and will find us someday." Marcus felt his heart racing. The pieces seemed to fit together in a way that was almost too incredible to believe. "What's your mama's full name, Emma?" "Maria Elena Rodriguez. She used to have a different last name before, but she changed it after I was born. She said it was easier that way." Emma began sketching the view from the office window, her small hand moving confidently across the paper. "Do you know what her name was before?" Emma paused in her drawing and looked up at Marcus with those serious brown eyes. "Mama told me it was Maria Elena Santiago. She said Santiago was her mama's name, and Rodriguez was the name of the nice man who helped us when I was a baby." The name Santiago hit Marcus like a physical blow. He remembered that name from somewhere deep in his past, from fragments of memories that had always felt more like dreams. Maria Santiago. Could it be the same young woman who had worked at the small restaurant where his adoptive parents had first told him he was adopted? The same woman who had looked at him with such sadness in her eyes that day when he was 7 years old? Marcus excused himself and walked to his window, his mind racing through possibilities. The birthmark, the facial features, the timing. It all seemed to point to something that should have been impossible. But as he looked back at Emma, quietly drawing at his conference table, he couldn't shake the feeling that his carefully ordered world was about to change forever. The intercom buzzed, and Mrs. Chen's voice came through. "Mr. Thompson, Maria Rodriguez is here to collect her daughter." Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that whatever happened next would determine the course of not just his life, but potentially Emma's as well. The truth he had been searching for. His entire life might be sitting right there in his office, drawing pictures of the world he had built while longing for the family he had never known. The mother's arrival. When Maria Rodriguez walked into Marcus's office, the world seemed to stop. She was a petite woman in her early 30s, with the same dark, curly hair as Emma, and eyes that held years of struggle and determination. She wore the navy blue uniform of the cleaning staff, and despite her obvious nervousness at being in the CEO's office, she carried herself with quiet dignity. "Mr. Thompson, I'm so sorry if Emma has been bothering you," Maria began in accented English, her hands twisting nervously at her sides. "She's usually very well behaved, but sometimes she gets curious about things." Marcus stood frozen for a moment, studying Maria's face. There was something achingly familiar about her, like a melody he couldn't quite remember but knew by heart. "Please, call me Marcus. And Emma hasn't been bothering me at all. She's a remarkable little girl." As Maria approached to collect Emma, Marcus noticed she was favoring her left leg slightly, walking with the hint of a limp that she was trying to hide. When she reached for Emma's hand, her sleeve pulled back slightly, revealing a small scar. On her forearm, a thin white line that looked like it had been there for years. "Mama, look! Mr. Marcus has the same birthmark as me," Emma exclaimed, holding up her wrist excitedly. Maria's eyes darted to Marcus's wrist, then back to his face, and he saw something flicker across her expression. Recognition, fear, and something that looked almost like hope, all mixed together. Her face went pale and she took a small step backward. That's very interesting, Misha," Maria said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we should go now. Mr. Thompson is a busy man." "Actually, Maria, I was wondering if I could speak with you for a moment. Emma could continue drawing here while we talk. Perhaps in the conference room next door." Marcus gestured toward the adjoining room, his heart pounding so hard he was sure they could both hear it. Maria looked uncertain, glancing between Emma and Marcus. "I don't want to take up your time, sir. I know you have important business to handle." "This might be the most important conversation I've ever had," Marcus said softly, and something in his tone made Maria look at him more closely. They settled Emma in the main office with a fresh set of colored pencils and paper, where she could see them through the glass partition but couldn't hear their conversation. Marcus closed the conference room door and turned to face Maria, who was standing rigidly by the window, her arms wrapped around herself defensively. "Maria, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll be honest with me. Have we met before?" Maria's eyes filled with tears, and she turned to look out at the city skyline. "You don't remember me, do you?" she said quietly. "But I suppose that makes sense. You were so young then." Marcus felt his legs go weak, and he sank into one of the conference chairs. "I do remember something. A restaurant. Rosa's, I think it was called. You worked there when I was about 7. My parents had taken me there to celebrate my adoption anniversary, and they explained to me what adoption meant for the first time." "Rosa's Kitchen," Maria nodded, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "I was 17 then, working after school to help my family. You came in with your parents. Such a nice couple, the Thompsons. You were wearing a little blue shirt, and you kept staring at me like you were trying to figure something out." "You looked so sad when you saw me," Marcus remembered. "I asked my mother why the pretty lady was crying, but she just said sometimes grown-ups cry for happy reasons too." Maria turned back to face him, and Marcus could see years of pain and regret written across her features. "I was crying because I was happy and heartbroken at the same time. Happy because you looked so healthy and loved, but heartbroken because—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Because I was your son," Marcus said quietly. The words hung in the air between them like a bridge neither was sure they could cross. Maria collapsed into the chair across from him, sobbing openly now. "I was 15 when I got pregnant," Maria began, her voice shaking. "The father was a boy from school who disappeared when he found out. My family was so ashamed, especially my father. They sent me to live with my aunt in another city until you were born." Marcus reached across the table and gently took her hand, noticing how small and work-worn it was compared to his own. "What happened after I was born? I wanted to keep you so badly, Marcus. But I was just a child myself, with no money, no education, no way to provide for you. My aunt knew about the Thompsons. They had been trying to have a baby for years. She said they could give you everything I couldn't. A good home, education, opportunities. But you stayed in touch somehow. You got a job at Rosa's Kitchen because you knew they took me there sometimes." Maria nodded, wiping her eyes with a tissue Marcus had handed her. "I wanted to see that you were okay, that you were happy. It was selfish, I know, but I couldn't completely let go. When you stopped coming to the restaurant, I thought maybe it was better that way." "I need to know about Emma," Marcus said gently. "When was she born?" 7 years ago, Maria replied. "After I saw you at the restaurant that last time, I met Carlos Rodriguez. He was a kind man who worked construction. We got married and he adopted Emma when she was 2. He never cared that she wasn't his biological daughter. He loved her like she was. But Emma said her father went to heaven. Carlos died in an accident on a job site 3 years ago." Maria's voice broke again. "He left us a little money, but it ran out quickly. That's why I'm working here. I need the health insurance and steady pay for Emma's future." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the weight of this revelation. Not only had he found his birth mother, but he had discovered that he had a sister, a half-sister who carried the same distinctive birthmark that had marked his own childhood as different. "Does Emma know about me? About us being related?" "She knows she has an older brother somewhere out there. I told her that before she was born, I had a baby boy that I had to give to another family so he could have a better life. But I never told her your name, or that you might still be in the city." Through the glass partition, they could see Emma holding up her latest drawing, a picture of 3 people standing in front of a tall building. Even from a distance, Marcus could see that she had drawn a man in a suit, a woman in a blue uniform, and a little girl holding both their hands. "She's been drawing families a lot lately," Maria observed. "Always 3 people. Sometimes I think she knows something that even she doesn't understand yet." Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking down at the city where he had built his empire while his birth family struggled just miles away. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had spent years creating jobs and opportunities for others, while the people he should have been helping most were working in his own building without him even knowing it. "Maria, I want to be part of Emma's life. I want to be part of your life if you'll let me. But I also want to be honest with you. This is overwhelming, and I'm not sure how to navigate this situation." Maria joined him at the window, and for the first time since entering his office, she smiled genuinely. "I've been praying for 15 years that someday you would find your way back to us, even though I knew it was probably impossible. Maybe God has a sense of humor, bringing us together in your own building." "What do we tell Emma?" "The truth," Maria said simply. "She's smart, and she deserves to know that the family she's been drawing in her pictures has been real all along." The truth unfolds. The conversation with Emma began simply enough. Marcus and Maria sat on either side of her at the small conference table, while Emma continued working on her drawing, now adding more details to the 3-person family she had sketched earlier. "Emma, sweetheart, Mr. Marcus and I need to tell you something very important," Maria began, her voice gentle but serious. "Do you remember the stories I told you about your big brother?" Emma looked up from her drawing, her brown eyes moving between her mother and Marcus with curious intelligence. "You mean the brother who lives with another family? The one who has the same special mark as me?" Marcus unconsciously touched his wrist, amazed once again by this little girl's perceptiveness. "That's right, Emma. What else do you remember about those stories? Mama said she had to give him to people who could take better care of him because she was very young and didn't have enough money. She said it was the hardest thing she ever had to do, but she did it because she loved him very much." Emma's matter-of-fact recitation of the story showed she had heard it many times before. Maria reached over and smoothed Emma's hair. "Emma, what would you say if I told you that your big brother was sitting right here with us?" Emma's eyes widened, and she looked at Marcus with new understanding dawning on her face. "Are you my brother? Is that why you have the same birthmark as me?" "Yes, Emma. I am your brother," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I've been looking for my family my whole life without even knowing it." Instead of the confusion or upset they had both feared, Emma's face broke into the biggest smile Marcus had ever seen. She jumped up from her chair and threw her arms around his neck, hugging him with the enthusiastic embrace that only children can give. "I knew it," she exclaimed. "I drew you before I even met you. Look!" She grabbed her notebook and flipped to an earlier page, showing them a drawing she had made weeks ago. A tall man in a suit with the same birthmark on his wrist, standing next to a building that looked remarkably like Thompson Industries. Marcus and Maria exchanged stunned looks. Over Emma's head, "How did you know to draw this, mija?" Maria asked. "I dream about him sometimes," Emma said simply, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. "In my dreams, he's always looking for us, just like we're looking for him. And in the dreams, he lives in a really tall building and helps lots of people." The innocence and acceptance with which Emma embraced this life-changing revelation humbled both adults. While they had been wrestling with the complexity and implications of their reunion, Emma saw only the simple joy of a family made whole. "So, now we can all live together?" Emma asked hopefully. "Like a real family?" Marcus felt his heart break a little at her eager hopefulness. The situation was far more complicated than Emma could understand. There were legal considerations, practical matters, and emotional complexities that would need to be carefully navigated. "It's not quite that simple, sweetheart," Marcus explained gently. Your mama and I need to figure out how to make this work in the best way for everyone, especially for you. Over the next hour, as Emma continued drawing what she now called family pictures, Marcus and Maria began to discuss the practical realities of their situation. Maria had been living paycheck to paycheck, raising Emma in a small one-bedroom apartment across town. Her job at Thompson Industries barely covered their basic needs, and she had been worried about Emma's future, how she would pay for college, or even for better educational opportunities in the present. I don't want charity, Maria said firmly, when Marcus began to discuss ways he could help financially. I've worked hard to provide for Emma on my own, and I'm proud of what we've built together, even if it isn't much. It's not charity, Maria. It's family taking care of family. And besides, look at what an amazing job you've done raising her. Emma is confident, creative, kind, and incredibly smart. That's all because of you. As the afternoon wore on, other employees began to notice that the CEO had spent the entire day with one of the cleaning staff and her daughter. By the time the Bring Your Child to Work Day activities were ending, word had spread through the building that something unusual was happening on the 20th floor. Mrs. Chen knocked on the conference room door. Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are several board members waiting in your office. They're asking about the quarterly reports. Marcus had completely forgotten about the board meeting scheduled for that afternoon. The quarterly reports, the merger discussions, the strategic planning session, all the things that had seemed so critically important that morning now felt trivial compared to what he had discovered. Tell them I'll need to reschedule, Marcus said, then paused. Actually, ask them to wait. I have something I need to share with them. Maria looked alarmed. Marcus, you don't need to tell your business partners about us. This is personal. Maria, these people aren't just business partners. Some of them have been with me since the beginning of the company. They're like family to me, and I want them to meet my real family. Emma, who had been listening quietly while working on yet another drawing, looked up with excitement. Are we going to meet more people? I like meeting new people. The board members, 5 distinguished men and women who had helped build Thompson Industries into the success it was today, filed into the conference room with expressions ranging from curious to concerned. They had never seen Marcus miss or postpone a board meeting, and the fact that he was doing so to spend time with an employee and her child was unprecedented. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience today, Marcus began, standing at the head of the conference table with his hand on Emma's shoulder. I called you here because something extraordinary has happened, and I wanted you to be the first to know. He gestured to Maria and Emma. I'd like you to meet Maria Rodriguez, who works in our facilities department, and her daughter, Emma. As of today, I've discovered that Maria is my birth mother, and Emma is my sister. The silence in the room was deafening. Board members exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to process this information. Finally, Catherine Walsh, the longest-serving board member and Marcus's closest advisor, spoke up. Marcus, are you certain about this? This is quite a claim. I'm absolutely certain, Marcus replied, pulling back his sleeve to show his birthmark, then gently lifting Emma's wrist to show hers. But beyond that, Catherine, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Emma, unfazed by the formal atmosphere and distinguished company, walked over to Catherine and held up her latest drawing, a picture of the conference room with all the people in it, each person labeled with their name even though she had just met them. How did you know our names, sweetheart? Catherine asked, her business-like demeanor softening as she looked at the detailed drawing. I listened very carefully, Emma said with a smile. Mama taught me that if you pay attention to people, you can learn important things about them. As the board members examined Emma's drawing and listened to the story of how Marcus and Maria had found each other, the initial shock began to give way to something else. These were people who had watched Marcus build a company based on values of family, loyalty, and taking care of employees. The fact that his own family had been working in the building without his knowledge seemed almost poetic. "Well," said Robert Chen, Mrs. Chen's husband and the company's chief financial officer, "this certainly puts a new perspective on our employee benefits discussions, doesn't it?" The room erupted in gentle laughter, and Marcus felt the tension begin to ease. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he wouldn't be facing them alone. Building new foundations. The weeks following the revelation brought both joy and challenges that Marcus hadn't anticipated. Word of the CEO's family discovery spread through Thompson Industries like wildfire, and the story captured the imagination of employees at every level. Some saw it as a heartwarming miracle, while others whispered concerns about nepotism and whether Maria's position in the company would change. Marcus decided to address these concerns head-on during the monthly all-hands meeting. Standing before nearly 300 employees in the main auditorium with Maria and Emma sitting in the front row, he spoke from the heart about integrity, merit, and the difference between helping family and compromising business principles. "I want to be absolutely clear," Marcus announced to the assembled crowd. "Maria Rodriguez earned her position here through her hard work and dedication, not through any family connection I didn't even know existed. She will continue to be evaluated based on her performance, just like every other employee. The only thing that has changed is that I now know she's the woman who gave me life, and I'm grateful to work alongside her." Maria had been terrified about the attention and speculation surrounding their story. She had spent years working quietly, in the background, taking pride in her work, but never seeking recognition. Now, everywhere she went in the building, people stared and whispered. Some colleagues were supportive and excited for her, but others seemed resentful or suspicious of her newfound connection to the CEO. The situation became more complicated when Marcus's adoptive parents, Robert and Helen Thompson, learned about the discovery. They had always encouraged Marcus to search for his birth family if he wanted to, but they hadn't expected it to happen so suddenly or dramatically. When they met Maria and Emma for the first time, the encounter was awkward and emotionally charged. "We're grateful that you made the difficult decision to place Marcus for adoption," Helen Thompson said carefully during their first meeting at Marcus's penthouse apartment. "He's had a wonderful life, and we've been blessed to be his parents." Maria, wearing her best dress and clearly nervous about meeting the people who had raised her son, nodded respectfully. "I never stopped thinking about him or wondering if I made the right choice. Seeing the man he's become, I know you gave him everything I couldn't." Emma, meanwhile, was fascinated by her brother's adoptive parents and bombarded them with questions about Marcus's childhood. Did he like to draw when he was little? Did he always want to work in a tall building? Did he ever ask about his birth, family? Robert Thompson, a retired engineer with a gentle demeanor, found himself charmed by Emma's curiosity. "He was always asking questions about everything," he told her, "just like you do. And he was always building things, with blocks, with sticks, with whatever he could find." As the evening progressed, the tension began to ease. Both sets of parents realized they shared the same goal, wanting what was best for Marcus and Emma. But the complexity of blending two families that had developed separately for over 30 years wasn't something that could be resolved in one dinner. The biggest challenge came when Emma started asking when she could move in with Marcus. She had become completely enamored with her big brother and wanted to spend every possible moment with him. She drew pictures of his apartment, memorized the view from his office windows, and talked constantly about when we lived together as a real family. "Mia, we've talked about this," Maria explained gently one evening as she tucked Emma into bed in their small apartment. "Marcus is part of our family now, but that doesn't mean we all have to live in the same house. We have our own home here. But why can't we live with him? He has such a big apartment and there's room for us. And then we could see him every day instead of just on weekends." Marcus had indeed been spending every weekend with Maria and Emma, taking them to museums, parks, and restaurants around the city. He had also quietly been helping with expenses, paying for Emma's art classes, ensuring their apartment had better heating, and setting up a college fund for Emma's future education. 1. Saturday, while Emma was at her art class, Marcus and Maria had their first truly honest conversation about the future. They walked through Central Park, where the autumn leaves created a golden canopy above them. "I want to do right by both of you," Marcus said as they sat on a bench overlooking the lake. "But I'm not sure what that looks like. I've been successful in business, but I have no experience being a brother or a son to someone who knew me as a baby." "You don't need experience to be family," Maria replied. "You just need to care, and you already do that. Look how happy Emma is now. She talks about you constantly, draws pictures of you, and brags to her friends about her big brother who owns a building. But what about you, Maria? What do you want out of this situation?" Maria was quiet for a long moment, watching the ducks swimming in the lake. "I want Emma to have opportunities I never had. I want her to go to good schools, maybe even college someday. I want her to know that she comes from a family that loves her, even if that family is complicated." "And for yourself?" "I want to not worry about money all the time. I want to not lie awake at night wondering what will happen to Emma if something happens to me. I want to feel like the sacrifice I made 38 years ago meant something. Good for everyone." That evening, Marcus made a decision that would change all their lives. He called Maria and asked her to meet him at his office the next morning, not as an employee, but as family. When Maria arrived, she found Marcus standing in his conference room with a stack of legal documents and his personal attorney, David Kim, whom she had met briefly the week before. "Maria, I've been thinking about what we discussed yesterday, and I have a proposal for you," Marcus began. "I want to establish a family trust that will ensure Emma's future education and provide security for both of you. But I also want to offer you a new position in the company." Maria looked confused. "Marcus, I told you I don't want charity." "This isn't charity. It's business," Marcus replied with a smile. "I've been thinking about expanding our community outreach programs, and I need someone to head up those efforts. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle, who knows what families in our community really need, and who has the heart to make a real difference." David Kim spread out the job description and contract details. The position would involve overseeing Thompson Industries' charitable foundations, developing programs to help single parents and low-income families, and working with local schools and community organizations. The salary was more than double what Maria was making in facilities, and it came with full benefits and opportunities for advancement. "You want me to run your charity programs?" Maria asked, hardly believing what she was hearing. "I want you to help me figure out how to use our resources to help families like yours, like ours, have better opportunities. Nobody knows better than you what those families need." Maria looked at the contract, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus, I don't know if I'm qualified for this. I never went to college. I don't have business experience." "You have something more valuable than a degree, Maria. You have compassion, determination, and real-world experience that can't be taught in a classroom. We'll provide training for the business aspects, but the heart of this job is something you already possess." That afternoon, when Emma came home from school to find her mother crying over paperwork spread across their small kitchen table, she immediately worried something was wrong. "What's wrong, Mama? Why are you crying?" "Nothing's wrong, mi amor. Everything is very, very right," Maria said, pulling Emma into a hug. "Your brother just offered me a new job helping other families, and I think our lives are about to get much better." Emma looked at the papers with the Thompson Industries letterhead, then back at her mother's tear-streaked but smiling face. "Does this mean we're going to be okay?" "Yes, mija. I think we're going to be more than okay. I think we're going to be exactly where we're supposed to be." New beginnings. 6 months after their life-changing discovery, the Thompson Rodriguez family was still navigating their new reality, but with growing confidence and joy. Maria had settled into her role as Director of Community Outreach with remarkable success, launching 3 new programs that had already helped dozens of local families. Her natural empathy, combined with business training provided by the company, had made her a respected figure both within Thompson Industries and in the broader community. Emma had flourished in her new circumstances beyond anyone's expectations. Marcus had enrolled her in the city's best elementary school, where her artistic talents were nurtured alongside rigorous academics. She had also become something of a celebrity among Marcus's business associates, who were charmed by her intelligence and creativity. She would often spend afternoons in Marcus's office drawing while he worked, and had become the unofficial mascot of several board meetings. The most significant change came when Maria and Emma moved into a beautiful townhouse just 15 minutes from Marcus's apartment. Marcus had initially wanted them to move into a place he owned, but Maria had insisted on paying rent and maintaining some independence. The compromise was a property in a lovely neighborhood with excellent schools, where Maria paid what she could afford and felt proud of providing a real home for her daughter. Emma's room in the new house was filled with art supplies, books, and drawings of their growing family constellation. She had seamlessly incorporated Marcus's adoptive parents into her understanding of family, referring to them as Grandpa Bob and Grandma Helen. She had also begun asking probing questions about whether Marcus would ever get married, and give her a sister-in-law to draw pictures with. The questions about Marcus's romantic life weren't just coming from Emma. At 38, Marcus had been so focused on building his business that he had never made time for serious relationships. But becoming part of a family had changed his perspective on what truly mattered in life. This shift in priorities became evident when Marcus met Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a pediatric psychologist who was consulting with Emma's school on gifted children's programs. Sarah had been recommended to help Emma adjust to her new circumstances and ensure that the dramatic changes in her life weren't causing any emotional difficulties. Their first meeting was supposed to be a brief consultation about Emma's adjustment, but it turned into a 3-hour conversation about child development, family dynamics, and the importance of maintaining stability during major life transitions. Sarah was impressed by Marcus's thoughtful approach to his new role as a big brother, and Marcus found himself drawn to her intelligence, warmth, and genuine care for children's well-being. Emma is remarkably well-adjusted for a child who has experienced such dramatic changes, Sarah told Marcus during their second meeting. Her mother has done an exceptional job providing emotional security, and your presence in her life has added excitement and opportunity without disrupting her sense of self. Marcus found himself looking forward to these consultations more than he cared to admit. Sarah had a way of seeing the deeper emotional currents in family situations, and her insights helped him understand how to be the brother Emma needed while respecting the foundation Maria had built. "I have to ask," Sarah said one afternoon as they watched Emma through the school's observation window, completely absorbed in creating an elaborate chalk drawing. "How are you handling all of this? Finding your birth family, becoming an instant big brother, navigating the complexities of blended family dynamics. That's a lot for anyone to process." Marcus considered her question carefully. "Honestly, some days I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and other days I feel completely overwhelmed by the responsibility. I keep waiting for someone to tell me I'm doing it wrong." "There's no instruction manual for your situation," Sarah replied with a gentle smile. "But from what I've observed, you're approaching this with exactly the right combination of commitment and humility." Their professional relationship gradually evolved into something more personal. Sarah began joining Marcus, Maria, and Emma for weekend outings, initially as Emma's advocate, but increasingly as someone who genuinely cared about the entire family. Emma, with the perception that only children possess, immediately began scheming to bring Marcus and Sarah together. "I think Dr. Sarah should come to our family dinner on Sunday," Emma announced one afternoon while helping Marcus organize papers in his office. She knows all about families, so she could help us figure out how to be an even better one. Emma, Dr. Sarah has her own family and her own life, Marcus replied, though he found himself hoping Sarah would accept if the invitation were extended. But she told me she doesn't have any kids of her own, and she spends most Sundays reading boring psychology books. I think she needs a family to take care of her too. When Marcus relayed this conversation to Maria, she laughed knowingly. That little girl sees everything. She's been asking me questions about whether you're lonely living by yourself and whether Dr. Sarah seems sad that she doesn't have children. And what do you tell her? I tell her that sometimes the best families are the ones that choose each other, not just the ones we're born into. The Sunday dinner Emma had suggested became a regular occurrence. Sarah brought her expertise in child psychology, but she also brought laughter, intellectual stimulation, and a perspective on family that helped all of them navigate their unique situation. She understood the delicate balance of honoring the past while building something new. During one of these dinners, as they all worked together in Maria's kitchen preparing a traditional Colombian meal that Maria was teaching them to make, Emma made an announcement that surprised everyone. "I want to have a party," she declared, carefully stirring the rice under Maria's supervision. "A family party where we invite everyone who belongs to us now." "What kind of party, mija?" Maria asked. "A birthday party, but not for someone getting older. A birthday party for our family being born, because we weren't really a complete family until we all found each other." Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances over Emma's head, both struck by the wisdom in her simple statement. This 7-year-old had articulated something the adults had been struggling to define, that their coming together represented the birth of something entirely new, not just the reunion of something that had been broken. "I think that's a beautiful idea, Emma," Sarah said. "What would a family birthday party look like?" Emma's eyes lit up with excitement as she began describing her vision. "We would invite Grandpa Bob and Grandma Helen and Mrs. Chen from the office and all the people from the company who helped us when we first met. And we would have a big cake with candles for everyone, and we would take pictures to put in a family album." "And what would we celebrate exactly?" Marcus asked, charmed by her enthusiasm. "We would celebrate that sometimes families get lost, but they can find each other again. And we would celebrate that love is stronger than time and distance, and not knowing where people are." As Emma continued planning her family birthday party, describing decorations and games and who should sit where at the table, Marcus realized that his little sister had solved a puzzle that had been troubling him for months. He had been trying to figure out how to honor his adoptive family while embracing his birth family, how to be grateful for the past while building toward the future. Emma saw it simply. Family wasn't about biology or legal documents or living arrangements. Family was about choosing to love each other and show up for each other, regardless of how you found your way together. That evening, after Sarah had gone home and Emma was asleep, Marcus and Maria sat in the living room of her townhouse, planning Emma's family birthday party and talking about how much their lives had changed. "Do you ever regret it?" Maria asked quietly. "Finding us, I mean. Your life was so much simpler before." Marcus looked around the room, taking in the family photos that now included all of them. Emma's artwork covering the walls, the evidence of a life that was complicated but full of love. Simpler, yes, but not better. Not nearly as good as this. Maria smiled, and for the first time since they had reunited, Marcus saw the worry lines around her eyes soften. She had spent months afraid that this new family configuration was too good to be true, that somehow it would all fall apart. But looking at her son, successful, kind, and genuinely happy to be part of their lives, she finally allowed herself to believe that they had all found their way home. The family. Emma's family birthday party took place on a warm Saturday in spring, exactly 1 year after the day Marcus had first spotted her in his office lobby. The celebration was held in the rooftop garden of Thompson Industries, which, had been transformed into a festive space with tables, decorations, and a view of the entire city spread out below. The guest list had grown far beyond Emma's original vision. In addition to the core family members, there were employees from every level of the company, neighbors from Maria's townhouse complex, teachers from Emma's school, and even some of Sarah's colleagues who had become invested in their story. Mrs. Chen had taken charge of coordinating the catering, insisting that this was a company celebration worthy of their finest efforts. As guests began arriving, Marcus stood near the entrance greeting people, marveling at how this diverse group had all become part of their extended family story. Robert and Helen Thompson arrived first, carrying gifts and wearing matching shirts that Emma had designed for them with fabric markers. David Kim, Marcus's attorney, brought his own children, who immediately gravitated toward Emma and her art. Station. Sarah arrived carrying a large wrapped package that immediately caught Emma's attention. "Dr. Sarah, what's in the box? Is it for the family birthday?" "It's something special I made for all of you," Sarah replied, setting the package on the gift table, "but we'll open it later when everyone is here." As the afternoon progressed, the party took on a life of its own. Emma had appointed herself as the official host and moved through the crowd with confidence, introducing people to each other and explaining the significance of the family birthday concept to anyone who would listen. "This is my mama, who found her son after 23 years, Emma would say, pulling Maria forward to meet someone new. "And this is my brother Marcus, who used to be lost, but now he's found. And this is Dr. Sarah, who helps families understand each other better." Marcus watched his sister work the crowd with the skill of a natural politician and found himself thinking about how much she had grown in the past year. She was still the same creative, observant child he had first met, but she now carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew she belonged somewhere, who had a family that would always be there for her. The centerpiece of the celebration was a cake that Mrs. Chen had commissioned from the city's finest bakery. It was decorated with an edible reproduction of Emma's very first drawing of their family, the three figures standing in front of a tall building holding hands. But the baker had added details that brought the picture to life. Tiny windows in the building showing people inside, flowers around the family's feet, and a sun overhead with rays reaching down to touch each person. When it came time to make speeches, Marcus had prepared remarks about family, love, and second chances. But when he stood before the assembled group, looking out at faces that had become dear to him over the past year, he found himself abandoning his prepared words. "A year ago, I thought I knew what success looked like," he began. "I had built a company, earned respect in my field, and achieved most of the goals I had set for myself. But I was missing something essential, and I didn't even know it." He gestured toward Maria and Emma, who were standing together near the cake. "Finding my family taught me that success isn't about what you build for yourself. It's about what you build with the people you love. It's about showing up for each other, celebrating together, and creating something bigger than any individual accomplishment." Emma, never one to let adults have all the attention, stepped forward and tugged on Marcus's jacket. "Can I say something too?" Marcus lifted her up so she could address the crowd, and Emma looked out at the gathering with the serious expression she wore when she had something important to communicate. "I want to thank everyone for coming to our family birthday party," she began in her clear, confident voice. "Before this year, our family was broken into pieces and scattered around the city. But now we're all together, and we're stronger because we have more people to love us and more people to love back." She paused, looking around at the faces in the crowd. "I learned that families aren't just about being born together. Families are about choosing to take care of each other and choosing to stay together even when things are hard. So thank you for choosing to be part of our family." The applause that followed Emma's speech was warm and heartfelt, and Marcus felt his eyes fill with tears at his sister's wisdom and grace. When it came time to open Sarah's gift, the family gathered around as she carefully unwrapped the large package. Inside was a custom-made photo album, but not an ordinary one. Sarah had created a visual timeline of their first year as a reunited family, starting with copies of Emma's earliest drawings and including photos from every significant moment they had shared. The album began with a copy of Emma's drawing of the three-person family from that first day in Marcus's office, and continued through pictures from their first dinner together, Emma's school events that Marcus and Maria had attended together, holiday celebrations, and candid moments that Sarah had captured during their Sunday dinners. But the most moving section was at the end, a series of photos showing how each person had changed over the course of the year. Marcus looked more relaxed and genuinely happy than in any previous photos. Maria's smile was brighter and her posture more confident. Emma had grown not just physically, but in the way she carried herself. She looked like a child who knew she was loved and valued. The final page of the album was blank, except for a handwritten note from Sarah. For the memories yet to be made by a family that proves love is stronger than time, distance, and circumstance. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Marcus found himself standing alone on the rooftop for a moment, looking out at the city where his life had been transformed so completely. Sarah joined him at the railing, and they stood together in comfortable silence. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Sarah asked. "I was just thinking about how different everything looks from up here now," Marcus replied. "A year ago, this view represented everything I had accomplished on my own. Now it represents everything we've built together. Are you happy with the trade-off?" Marcus turned to look back at the party, where Emma was showing her artwork to the remaining guests while Maria packed up leftover cake. His adoptive parents were helping Mrs. Chen fold chairs, and several employees were already making plans for next year's family birthday celebration. "I wouldn't trade this for anything," he said with certainty. "This is what I was really building toward all along, even when I didn't know it." As the sun set over the city, the newly configured Thompson-Rodriguez family stood together on the rooftop, watching the lights come on in windows across the metropolis. Each light represented other families, other people finding their way to each other, other stories of love that transcended the conventional definitions of how families should be formed. Emma, tired from her big day but still buzzing with excitement, leaned against Marcus's side. "Next year, can we have the family birthday party again?" "Every year," Marcus promised, putting his arm around his sister. "For as long as you want to celebrate us being together, forever then," Emma said with the matter-of-fact certainty that only children possess. Because families that choose each other get to be together forever. Looking around at the people who had become his family through choice, circumstance, and love, Marcus realized that Emma was absolutely right. They had created something that would last forever, not because it was perfect, but because it was built on the foundation of people who had decided to show up for each other, no matter what. The family birthday had become more than a celebration. It had become a promise that they would continue choosing each other year after year as they wrote the next chapters of their story together.